appreciate if we can hold up to that. Thank you.
I will speak in Macedonian. Thank you for the invitation and the possibility to participate on this forum. The Regulatory Commission in the past period started with analysis to see the possibility to introduce block tariffs. And one important reason why we are introducing such tariffs is that we have a real high average consumption per household, because in the country, many of the households do not have another option for heating during the winter period, and they use electricity. Also, when we conducted the analysis, we observed something serious. 1% of the households use 20% of the electricity of the households. And furthermore, when we deepened the analysis, we identified that only 17 consumers declared as households use 10% of the total needs of households. It's a fact that a household that spends so much, they don't have a problem to cover the expenses for electricity. The first and the most important objective with the introduction of the block tariffs for household was to send a signal to the consumers to reduce consumption of electricity, and those households that realistically don't have a financial problem to pay their bills, electricity bills. And I believe this will happen. First of all, they will invest in a more energy efficient way of heating with electricity, and in that way we will remove the burden of ESM to provide more and more energy for households. That is the first objective, to reduce consumption of electricity with the households. The second objective is, as much as possible, for this mechanism to be just, and it's a fact that more poor households spend less energy. The concept actually is to help vulnerable categories of consumers as much as possible, although I think that for these categories of consumers, we need to change the concept of support and to increase the support they receive, and also to increase the categories of vulnerable groups that receive help from the state in order to facilitate the changes of the electricity prices, because it's a fact that there are households that do not have a problem with paying their electricity bills. As a country, we need to forget the golden period of energy sectors. We have real problems with domestic production, and these problems are due to lack of investments in the field. The third block in Bitola was built at the end of the 80s. And the experts then, all experts in the energy sectors talk that the reserves of coal will end, the quality will be low. But unfortunately, we believe that, yes, it would happen, but somewhere further in the future. So during these years of crisis, we are facing this problem. The best solution is investing in the sector, but these investments must be paid. Non-investing, we are now paying it, and we are just extinguishing the fire. If we invested, we wouldn't have the expenses we have now to procure electricity on a national level, because realistically we need to see also the Macedonian companies that face seriously increased expenses for electricity. But what is especially important for me is that many of the Macedonian companies in the past several months invested in building photovoltaics, to reduce their expenses. I expect that until the end of the year to have new 80 megawatt hour voltaics. As comparison, the last biggest hydro plant in Macedonia has that strength, and I hope that this signal finally will be accepted by the municipal institutions and not to use manipulation and to go back to the regulatory electricity market. Thank you.
Господин Beslimovsky, investments is a great way to end up a very interesting, very resourceful panel. I've enjoyed it greatly. Hope that you as my panelists, distinguished guests today have enjoyed it too, as also our audience. So I'll look forward to see you on a different occasion, continuing these discussions on the green and energy transition, especially from the financing point of view. All the best. Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, and first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this discussion. And I see this invitation is simply the confirmation of the very good relation we have with the government of North Macedonia in transforming the energy sector in this country. Energy community is about two pillars, basically. The one is making the integration of the markets, energy markets, and the second pillar, which has been added last year to our portfolio, is the decarbonization agenda. And let me to answer your question, having these two pillars of the activity of the energy community in mind. For a country like North Macedonia, a small country with well-developed infrastructure, regional integration is a solution, is a part of the solution, and the energy community is supporting the government and the other stakeholders, including the Regulatory Commission, in this way, as we see that there is a lot of potential which could be tapped from being integrated with the regional partners, with the neighboring countries. This is true for both for electricity and for gas, and that is the reason why we are appealing very much to the government of North Macedonia for establishing a single TSO in the gas sector, and then to pursue the process of unbundling of this to be established TSO in line with the energy community legislation. We think that this process is extremely important because of the fact that the security of gas supply to North Macedonia is at stake, is at risk now, just because of the non-reliable policy of the dominant supplier and the events we have been observing for the last couple of weeks, especially the decision to cut off the gas supply to Bulgaria. The same applies to the electricity market, so we do support and we do recommend the establishment of the organized electricity market, and I hope we are at the very end of this process in North Macedonia, and with the company which will establish for doing that, we hope that the established market will give a proper market signal for the electricity sector. This process is to be continued with the projects which are aiming at having the market coupling with the neighboring countries, and this is the legislation which is to be adopted this year by the Ministerial Council of the Energy Community, with the aim to have the electricity regulation network codes and guidance in place so that the market coupling with the neighboring countries could be used by the domestic stakeholders for optimizing the prices and for tapping from the potential of the regional integration. In this regard, I would like to underline the key role is playing the Regulatory Commission. And I would like to thank you, the Regulatory Commission, for the hard work in this regard. And this is a job which is to be applauded. And thank you very much, Marco, for your job and for being a leader in this process. When it comes to the decarbonization, the second pillar of the activities of the Energy Committee, we have already adopted the first part of the clean energy package, and that what is being expected from the government of North Macedonia is to adopt the legislation for the renewables and for the energy efficiency. And the deadline for doing that is the end of this year. And this is of the key importance for the country. As we see, there is already in place some very successful auctions for the photovoltaics. They have been adopted. There are some measures to be taken in the energy efficiency, and we think that the proper legislative framework for pursuing this policies of the utmost importance. The same applies to the governance regulation, which is now the part of the acquis of the energy community, and we discussed yesterday with the respective ministers on the next steps in this regard, so that there could be in North Macedonia a proper framework for not only for acceptance of the National Energy and Climate Plan, the first one which has been already proposed by the government, still not adopted because the legal basis is missing for doing that. But we hope that this will be the next step to be organized soon. The other element when it comes to the governance regulation and the climate law, which is being the tool for adoption, is the introduction of the carbon pricing mechanism in North Macedonia. And this is the subject which would need to be discussed, which would require a much deeper reflection what model is to be chosen for North Macedonia. But the same situation applies for, like in the market development, the reality is not waiting. So we are now in the process of preparation and negotiation of the 2030 targets for the energy community. And we hope that the government of North Macedonia will take a very active role in these negotiations so that we can have for the energy community the targets to be adopted in July informally or politically, so that we can have the process of formalization of this decision by the end of this year, and the Ministerial Council of the Energy Community would be able by the end of this year to set up the targets for renewables, for energy efficiency, and for CO2 emission reductions. And this process is meant to establish the framework, the regulatory framework, and this process is about to give the certainty to the potential investors that the policy which has been declared by the government is anchored in the energy community legislation, and what could offer to the potential investor a lot of certainty when it comes to the future policies to be implemented domestically by the country. So once again, thank you very much for inviting me and really to continue this discussion on these all topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olorkovsky, for very